the discovery that collapsed the boundary of time. It started with a result that should not have existed, an effect appearing before its cause, a signal arriving where time said it could not. To understand why this matters now, we need to look at how time has always been treated. A one-way flow, past to present to future. Cause first affects second. Every law of daily life depends on this order. Break it, and reality stops making sense. But modern physics was already under strain. At quantum scales, particles behave strangely. They existed in multiple states. They influenced one another instantly across distance. Time still flowed forward, but its authority weakened. Experiments hinted that sequence mattered less than structure. The breakthrough came when researchers studying quantum correlations noticed something unsettling. Measurements made later appear to influence outcomes earlier, not by sending information backward, but by reshaping probabilities retroactively. The math worked. The experiments repeated. Time's boundary blurred. At first, this was dismissed as interpretation, a trick of statistics. But deeper analysis revealed something profound. Events were not strictly ordered. They were entangled across time, linked by constraints rather than sequence. Cause and effect still existed, but not in the way humans experienced them. Outcomes were shaped by entire systems, not moments. The future helped define the past just enough to keep consistency intact. This did not allow messages to be sent backward. Paradoxes remained forbidden, but the boundary that separated before and after was no longer absolute. Time was no longer a straight line. It was a network, and once that network was exposed, the most basic assumption of reality quietly collapsed. As experiments multiplied, the implications grew heavier. Time was not breaking. It was revealing structure beneath intuition. Physicists realized that many laws did not require a strict direction of time at all. They required consistency across events, regardless of order. This reframed how processes were understood. Instead of events causing one another step by step, entire systems settled into self-consistent patterns. The past was not overwritten by the future, but constrained by it. What could happen earlier depended on what must happen later. This idea surfaced in multiple domains at once. Quantum experiments showed correlations across time. Thermodynamic models suggested direction emerged statistically, not fundamentally. Even neuroscience hinted that perception stitches moments together after they occur. Time, as experience, was constructed. The conflict arose when these ideas brushed against free will. If future constraints shape present possibilities, are choices truly open? Or are they selected from a narrowed set of outcomes that already satisfy consistency? Philosophers argue that constraint does not eliminate choice. It defines its boundaries. You choose within what can exist coherently. Physics did not remove agency. It described its limits. Still, the discomfort lingered. The human mind experiences time as flow, memory behind, expectation ahead. But the universe did not appear to share that experience. It operated as if past, present, and future were parts of a single structure. Experiments reinforced this view. When systems were isolated carefully, temporal order lost importance. Correlations held even when sequence varied. What mattered was not when something happened, but how it fit into the whole. This challenged how science itself worked. Prediction assumed forward flow. Explanation assumed backward tracing. But if time is a network, both become approximations. Human intuition resisted, but the evidence accumulated. Time had not collapsed into chaos. It had collapsed into relationship. And once relationships matter more than order, the meaning of before and after begins to dissolve. The conflict reached its peak when temporal networks collided with human responsibility. If outcomes are shaped by constraints across time, then simple causality is no longer enough to explain consequence. In practical terms, this appeared first in prediction limits. Certain systems could not be forecast accurately even with perfect data, not because of randomness, but because future constraints had not yet resolved. The systems present depended on possibilities not yet fixed. This unsettled science at its core. Experiments assume repeatability, but if temporal order is flexible, repeatability becomes conditional. The same setup could yield different outcomes depending on how the larger timeline resolved around it. The fear was not paradox, but fatalism. If the future constrains the present, are events already decided? Researchers push back. Constraints are not scripts. They limit impossibilities, not mandate specifics. Many futures can satisfy the same consistency. Still, the emotional weight remained. Humans experience regret, hope, and urgency because time feels irreversible. But physics suggested irreversibility was emergent, not fundamental, a property of scale, not of truth. The turning point came when models showed that breaking temporal boundaries did not remove meaning. It relocated it. Responsibility lived not in isolated moments, but in how choices fit into coherent narratives across time. Actions mattered because they shaped which consistent histories became real. Choice did not vanish. It selected paths that could exist without contradiction. This reframing was subtle but powerful. The future was not fixed. It was constrained. The past was not rewritten. It was selected. And in that selection lay both freedom and accountability, bound together across time rather than separated by it. The resolution arrived with a quieter understanding of time. It was no longer a ruler measuring events. It was a fabric holding them in relation. Past, present, and future were not stages in sequence, but perspectives on a single structure. Physics did not erase human experience. It explained why it feels the way it does. At large scales, time flows because entropy increases. Memory accumulates. Systems decohere. The arrow of time emerges from complexity, not from fundamental law. This insight reshaped how science approached reality. Models expanded to include entire histories, not just initial conditions. Explanation became holistic. Prediction became probabilistic within constraint. For everyday life, little changed. Clocks still ticked. Choices still felt urgent. But beneath that urgency sat a new perspective. The future was not a blank page. It was a landscape of possibilities already shaped by coherence. The discovery that collapsed the boundary of time did not trap humanity in fate. It clarified responsibility. Every choice participates in shaping a history that must make sense as a whole. Time did not end. It deepened. And perhaps that is a lasting lesson. Reality is not built moment by moment. It is woven across moments, with meaning emerging from how they hold together. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.